Hey guys, welcome back to. I guess I still have to figure out a name for this series or anything like that. But welcome back. Today's going to be another day where I react to something new on the internet or a video on the internet. So today's video is just going to be what if the US dollar becomes worthless? It's great to see, especially with the way inflation is going and with some of the murmurs going around, and we'll see how it is. So other than that, again, sit back and enjoy the show, and yeah, we'll start the clip shortly.
You decide to go out and do some shopping. All you really need is some bread, milk, cereal, some toothpaste, and some toilet paper. Okay, first things first, you have to load up your wheelbarrow with bills. Like, really stack the thing because your currency has lost its value. This happened in the 1920s in Germany, and people did quite literally go shopping with wheelbarrows full of cash. It was down to something called hyperinflation, and it made the German mark pretty much worthless. Back then, $1 was worth 1 trillion marks. Could this ever happen to the dollar? And what would happen?
As I'm watching that, I'm just sitting here. I'm like, sheesh, I remember talking to them about that in school, and I'm pretty sure they took $1 million or just wads of cash and they just throw it into the furnaces to heat their place, or they would use it even as like insulation for the buildings. It's crazy what hyperinflation does. It really is.
Happen if it did? That's what we'll find out today. First of all, it hasn't just happened in Germany. Currency collapses have happened in Argentina, Ukraine, Iceland, Hungary, Zimbabwe, and Venezuela. It basically
Ukraine and Iceland. I did not know about those two. That's that's a new one.
involves a country's currency being deemed as having very little value. There's no trust in the currency, and so it becomes almost worthless. So if we take a hypothetical situation in which the dollar suddenly started losing its value, what would follow is that anyone who owns dollars would want to sell them, but no one, of course, would want to buy them. People would start panicking. Foreign governments that owned dollars in the form of treasury bills, notes, and bonds would want to get rid of them. Investors would also scramble to offload their dollars, and this would be the beginning of a collapse. And the worst possible scenario is the dollar becoming pretty much worthless. If the dollar was worthless, imported goods would cost more. So when imported goods started costing more, the price of things goes up, and that's called inflation. So when you have hyperinflation, a loaf of bread might cost $1 million. It sounds crazy, but it's happened in other countries.
Sounds crazy. I'm pretty sure it is crazy. We all have goals to become millionaires, and a loaf of bread's gonna cost us $1 million. What?
People might then start getting paid millions and millions just so they can buy things. Outside of the country, the currency is down on its knees. There are two scenarios in which this could happen to the dollar. Before a total collapse, the dollar would have to weaken somehow, which is kind of the start of the crisis. It's the match that lights the fire. The dollar has declined before, and in the years between 2002 and 2018, it lost 6% of its value. That basically made it weaker, and so you could get more dollars when buying them with another currency such as the euro. You might ask why it lost its value during that time period, and the reason was because the US debt went from $6 trillion to $22 trillion. At the end of 2019, it was $23.2 trillion. The dollar could become weaker if the government decided to weaken the dollar so it could pay off its debts. There's another reason why the dollar could suddenly lose its value. As you may know, the dollar is the world's reserve currency, and that's good for the strength of the dollar since countries use it as a global currency. In fact, about half of the border-to-border transactions are made with the US dollar. For this reason, the central banks of the world must have a reserve of dollars. This includes entities such as the US Federal Reserve System, the Bank of England, the Bank of Japan, and the European Central Bank, and more. About 61% of foreign reserves are in US dollars. The euro is the next favorite currency, but it only accounts for about 30% of foreign currency reserves held in central banks. Okie dokie, so that's all fine and dandy, but what if the dollar loses more value and countries start thinking, hey, our currency is better and can be trusted more than your dollar? What if China said, look,
Just what he said right there, that hey, our currency is better and we should be trusted more. it explains cryptocurrency so much more in Bitcoin and everything. It's awesome. I don't know. I don't know if it's just me, but that's just kind of the vibes I got off when he was saying that.
Yuan should be the world's reserve currency. What if the EU says the euro is the top dog? If all these countries are holding so many dollars and it starts to weaken, they would be right to be just a little bit concerned. A lot of the US debt is owned by the US government, the Federal Reserve, and investors, but around $6 trillion is owned by other countries. The biggest owners of US debt are China and Japan. These debts are in the form of those treasuries we just talked about. So what if China and Japan decided to dump their treasuries and cash out? This would cause widespread panic, but would that really happen? Well, if they did sell their dollars and the dollar lost value, they would be in trouble. That's because their major consumer is the USA. If they do something that puts the dollar into decline, how will America be able to buy their products? It would be like cutting off your nose to spite your face. As one expert put it, why would you want to make your best customer go bankrupt? But just for the sake of today's show, let's say China and Japan did dump their dollars and others followed, and the dollar decline went into full swing. Globally, people would be offloading their dollars and buying more stable currencies such as the euro, or they might put their money into commodities or something such as gold. This would lead to interest rates in the US going up, and it would lead to inflation. Okay, so with a weak dollar, the US could export lots of stuff at a cheap price, but over time, the inflation and high interest rates would cause trouble. Then you've got a recession on your hands, and at worst, a depression. And what about you during all this turmoil? Well, if you've been clever, you've diversified your investments not attached to the dollar. Hey, you might even have a bit of gold, maybe even a great big pot of gold at the end of a rainbow. You might have transferable skills and be able to do business in other countries. You should...
I mean, shameless plug. Or you could have a shit ton of Bitcoin or a shit ton of cryptocurrencies to help fight the inflation. But, I just had to toss it in there.
probably have a passport too, because you might want to travel to find work elsewhere. If we look at the Great Depression of 1929 in the US, unemployment increased by 25%, and the number of homeless people also increased. Housing prices went down 30%, and lots of banks failed. International trade was down 65%. What also happened is agricultural products lost their value and farmers in the Midwest suffered what was called the Dust Bowl drought. Average incomes all over the U.S. dropped by 40%, and some of the worst hit became homeless or lived in slums. In 1928, the unemployment rate was 3.2%, and 5 years later, it was a massive 24.9%. It was a grand old mess and made the lives of many Americans miserable. The good news is, we don't see this happening, and neither do the economic experts. The global implications would be too catastrophic, and the dollar as the reserve currency isn't going anywhere for now. We think you need to know a bit more about the U.S. debt, so we advise you to...
I mean, everything they said was top notch. I could go back and try to find that clip here. Let me do that while I talk about it real quick. So somewhere in here, they talked about having trust in the currency, having trust and having value in their currency, which I guess is why we can, spectators say that Bitcoin's gonna drop down to 5 grand, 6 grand, 10 grand, or anything like that. But there's so much, and it's crazy. There's so much trust in the crypto community. Everything is decentralized. Everything's on an open ledger. The blockchain is fully transparable as well too, which is amazing. But there are some who want to see more privacy in the blockchain. But besides that, there's so much trust when it comes to cryptocurrencies and Bitcoin as a whole. There's just so much trust in that currency and the way to see the way to see that it will go. And awesome. Even I'm pretty sure they even talked about how its value. People started, if people were to start talking about their currency being more valuable than the US dollar, it would change the way things shifted. And it goes back to saying that there's a lot of value. We put the value into what that currency is worth, and to see what Bitcoin's worth, the value of it, we as the consumers or the buyers or the traders or the investors, we put the value on what Bitcoin is. So if people stop seeing the value, I guess, in the US dollar, and it did for some reason plummet, but according to this video, they're saying that it's not, then we can see a shift in the way the world is going to be globally. So again, it's just something, just some food for thought, I guess you could say, how there's trust in cryptos and there's the value that we put on it as the investors. I wish I had some time to go and find that exact clip where they just talked about it there, in that 1 second. But yeah, other than that, guys, that's it for this video here. But if you guys want to see more of these videos, or if you guys enjoy them, just drop down a comment below. And other than that, hopefully you guys have a great Father's Day today, and I will talk to you guys later. Cheers.